The exchange rate.
In recent weeks, Sri Lanka witnessed a marginal appreciation of the rupee against the US dollar. However, it began depreciating once more shortly after. How will the rupee perform as the IMF program takes effect?
It really depends on how the inflows and outflows on the dollar side are impacted by the IMF side. So on the direct capital inflows and outflows, it's really about sentiment, right? How improved is sentiment going to be? On the other hand, how soon do we have to make some of those payments back? And that also ties into the question on trade, because the trade flows resuming, or especially the import trade flows resuming, will really depend on how soon the demand in the economy recovers. That's really the main thing that has kept the currency controlled. That is the main thing that has kept the currency pressures contained. So, yes, there are currency controls. Yes, there are capital controls. There are some import controls, but it's primarily that demand question. The sooner the demand recovers, the quicker the currency can, depreciate further. Or on the other hand, or on the other side, the longer the demand stays compressed, the longer the currency can be strong.
Debt restructuring.
Sri Lanka was granted external debt restructuring assurances from its major creditors including China, India and the Paris Club. Now, Sri Lanka must present a debt restructuring strategy to the IMF by the end of April. How can Sri Lanka compile an effective debt restructuring strategy? Will domestic debt also be restructured?
The debt restructuring has to happen along with the negotiation of all creditors, and we have to provide pretty much the equal treatment depending on the negotiations. And we have to make sure that we get a debt relief which is enough for us to come back and actively reactivate our economy. At the same time, we have to make sure that we get an enough debt relief and we will not going back for another debt restructuring program. That are the two main conditions that we have to consider. Secondly, in terms of domestic debt restructuring, I am not endorsing it, but it looks like it is coming on our way. Even in the IMF report, they have mentioned about recapitalizing the banks and stabilizing the banking and the financial system. So any domestic debt restructuring has to be assured with the stability to our banking system.
Tax revenue.
IMF officials emphasize the importance of tax revenue growth in a manner that is friendly to economic growth while also protecting the poor and vulnerable. How can Sri Lanka achieve this?
In terms of our tax revenue, my main consideration would be the tax competitiveness, because we have to ensure that our tax regime is competitive with our regional players, because that's how we can even compete with the tax regime. So that would be my main consideration. That will allow more investors and more capital to flow in for Sri Lanka and economic activity to move forward.